Let me introduce Dr. Steve McCoy, the head of sales in Labvoice. They're developing voice recognition software to help simplify and streamline lab automation tasks. In his introduction to virtual and voice assistants to automate workflows, we'll hear about the state-of-the-art in voice control and its application in the lab. So Steve, let me hand the controls over to you.
Thanks, Sam. Let's see here.
And
okay. Excellent. So, hi, everybody. I am Steve McCoy, head of sales at Labvoice. Unfortunately, I'm not a doctor. I really appreciate that, Sam, but I do not have my PhD. Anyways, before beginning, I'd like to quickly thank the organizers of this event, Sam, Dan, Rita, members of the LRIG New England chapter for inviting us to speak here today. And so with that, let's begin. So at Labvoice, we know that scientists want to be safe, efficient, and most of all, focus on their science. So Labvoice provides a hands-free laboratory experience by bringing the first voice assistant tailored specifically for you and your workflows. No need to look away or take off your gloves while working in the lab and performing tasks like taking notes, working with software, or using instrumentation. We're working to voice enable your lab of the future today. So before getting into how Labvoice actually works, I'd just like to take a moment to explain our thinking and philosophy when it comes to the role of virtual and voice assistants in the lab and how it drives digital transformation. So essentially, we view a platform like Labvoice as a gap filler. Relying on our team's expertise and knowledge of lab systems and workflows, we have taken an integration-first approach to the Labvoice deployment. So a user can speak to Labvoice and have that information relayed to the cloud. And if the request or action is simple enough, like setting a timer or setting a reminder, they can have that sent back to them. But we also can integrate with the existing infrastructure in the lab using voice to control instruments, collect instrument readouts, update your ELN, LIMS, asset management and inventory platforms, and many, many other use cases, which we'll touch upon later on in the presentation. So we work hand in hand with our customers to figure out where Labvoice will augment the existing processes, infrastructure, and investments you've made into your lab and scientists over the past several years. So let's take a short look at how Labvoice actually works. So there's two ways that we get Labvoice into the lab environment. We have developed a smart speaker that you can put on your bench or workspace, and this is really designed for activities in fixed locations. If I'm working at a hood or at a glove box, if I'm sitting down at a bench looking through a microscope or pipetting for several hours or weighing, as we'll see in a demo video, this is how we've thought about deploying Labvoice smart device. And its size is similar to that to an Echo Dot or a Google Home that I'm sure you've seen in homes and locations around you. It's really easy to set up. It comes with a power adapter that can be plugged in, connects to Wi-Fi. There's an Ethernet port. There's even USB ports on it for simple integrations as well. But that's not ideal for people who are on the move, and that's why we developed the Labvoice Mobile App. So this is available both through iOS and Android stores, and it comes with a few additional capabilities that the smart device doesn't have. So first of all, we can take advantage of the camera, and now I can record video or take a picture or scan a barcode. But also, I have a visual interface. So now if I'm walking through an SOP or a method, I can see step-by-step instructions right in front of me. Also, I can see exactly what Labvoice is recording. And if there is an error, I can ask Labvoice to redo to then recollect that answer. And it's much more likely that a user is going to catch errors through a secondary source rather than through their own handwriting or own keyboarding. So out of the box, users are able to access the features that everyday voice assistants like Siri can offer. We can set timers and reminders, take down notes and observations, perform calculations and conversions. However, the true value of the Labvoice platform begins to unlock when the voice-enabled workflows that we introduce can be tailored to each lab. So we have a workflow designer that allows us to take any sort of process, an SOP, method, protocol, even a checklist, and turn that into a lab flow, or what we call one of these voice-assisted workflows. So now we can have a more complex back and forth dialogue between Labvoice and the user to ensure that the selected process is completed safely, with a higher degree of data integrity and compliance, and oftentimes at a more productive pace. So here's an example of this process in action. We have a video of a sample weighing process filmed in a lab, and this is our demo for you today. Some things to note before we start the video. One, our customer using Labvoice for this workflow is often weighing out dozens of samples at a time at a minimum. However, we don't need to sit here and watch a 10-minute demo video to drive home the point of how we use voice to create a voice-enabled workflow. Secondly, the video is filmed in a noisy lab and the user has a German accent. So this video will demonstrate how our technology can filter out the background noise and how it handles the accent. Third, there are integrations with both the balance and the barcode scanner. So all the user has to do is move the sample around. And we'll start this now.
Welcome to Labvoice.
Hey Labvoice. Use weighing.
Sure, Toby. Has balance 1 been checked today?
Yes.
Great. What's the sample set ID?
9694.
How many samples in sample set 9694?
2 samples.
What kind of solvent will you use?
Water.
What's the solvent ratio?
5.
Okay, 2 samples. Prepare the empty tubes and samples for weighing.
Hey Labvoice. Continue.
Scan the barcode and place the empty tube on the scale. Transfer the client sample mass to the tube on the balance and say weigh.
Weigh.
Scan the barcode and place the empty tube on the scale. Transfer the client sample mass to the tube on the balance and say weigh.
Weigh.
All 2 samples have been recorded for sample set 9694. The report has been sent to you.
So other than calling out that user for not wearing gloves, I would like to point out one aspect of the video that just may not be apparent to non-Labvoice users. So that video went as smoothly as possibly as it could have gone, and that's with good reason. We actually designed it that way. So if you're familiar with the concept of a happy path, we have the ability to account for any deviation as a user moves throughout a process or a protocol. So for example, Labvoice at the beginning of the video asked, has the balance been checked today? If the user had replied no, or I don't know, instead of yes, we could have 2 completely different set of instructions to instruct the user on how to proceed. So here's an example of a case study that we've reviewed, that we've done with one of our customers, Metabolon. This was done with a CRO, about 300 people based out of North Carolina. And this is essentially their research operations team would have to sort out incoming samples daily, requiring 2 people to do this process. So one person would sit with samples, read the sample ID, and wait for the other to find the appropriate destination for that sample or sample rack on a piece of paper. The person handling the samples would then place the sample where it needs to go. And it worked, but using 2 people to accomplish a job that ideally would only require 1 person was not necessarily adequate, especially at a cost-conscious CRO and especially during COVID times. So we replace the person reading the piece of paper with Labvoice. Now, this person picks up the sample or the sample rack, they read the ID out loud, and Labvoice instructs them on where to place it. Not only does this free up somebody else to focus on other tasks, but it actually makes the process faster. So our champion there likes to joke it's because they're no longer talking about what they're doing during the upcoming weekend, but essentially what took 2 people to do an hour, now 1 person is doing in half an hour. And so I'd be happy to do a deep dive into other use cases, and there's at least 1 other on our website that you should check out if you're interested. But for the sake of time, we'll just sort of quickly touch on them here. And this slide does a really good job of demonstrating there's a number of different labs, a number of different integrations, and a number of different customer types that we're supporting. But this is not just to say that because you can voice enable a workflow means that you should. In fact, we vet that process with our customers as we move throughout the deployment process. So we're constantly ensuring that they're receiving the value that they would expect from the presence of a virtual assistant. And speaking of that value, we've seen Labvoice, that through Labvoice, users have been able to experience a wide variety of positive outcomes. So for the company, we're enabling more data to be generated in the lab, increasing the quality of the data and making it machine readable for further analysis down the road. For scientists, we can promise to make their lives a bit easier, automating quote unquote boring tasks and transforming their workplace into a safer, more efficient environment. So I'll pause in just a minute to wrap up and answer any questions. And if we don't have time for yours, feel free to reach out to us by the info email address. You can visit the website. We have a chat bot there. You can also email me directly. We always appreciate follows on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in receiving a custom prototype of Labvoice, if there's a process or a workflow that you have in mind that you would like to see voice enabled, we can certainly build those for you rather quickly. So don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I will conclude now and open the floor to any questions.
Thanks, Steve. I have one question here on the Q&A column. Can Labvoice be integrated into existing ELNs?
Yes. So we have taken the integration first approach in terms of building Labvoice, and internally we like to joke that it is an integration platform with voice built on top of it. So if you go to the partners section of our website, you'll see that we have some ELNs already listed there. Sino is one of those, and we're actively going out and partnering with more software vendors. We should have another announcement sometime over the next week or so with another large ELN provider. But we're happy to do that both on a custom basis as well as off-the-shelf platforms and tools like Dotmatics, Synode, IDBS, Benchling, and so on.
Great. We have another question pop up, and let's try to squeeze this into the little tiny bit of space we have here. How do you interface the phone with the instrument?
So to answer that as quickly as I possibly can, the integration is actually happening through cloud services or other types of IoT devices that we place behind your firewalls and in your infrastructure. The phone itself is then communicating to those devices through the cloud. We'd be happy to go through any sort of tech review or architecture review with folks, again, in a little bit more detail. That's a really simple answer to that question.
Well, great. I appreciate the presentation.